during those first few years, was there a moment that you got some clarity or just felt like, okay, this thing's going to work? Like there's a turning point, and maybe not as dramatic as a big win from last year, but like in those early years where you said it's kind of starting to work a little bit.
Yeah. So here's my first 2 weeks in the season. We lose at home to East Tennessee State, and they had a really strong team, but like that, that's obviously, there was no version of this in my mind that
you're losing to East Tennessee State.
That was a starting point, right? So I think after that game, it was, oh my God, this is going to be a little longer journey than I'd imagined. The next week we go to Colorado State, and we come from behind and win on the road. And, it felt like we just won the Super Bowl, and so in that game, I don't know, like you think anything's possible, from there, we end up, I think that the next game was Stanford at home, and they pulled away from us. Then we played Georgia, and it's 35-0 after the first quarter. And there's so much about that team where we weren't actually competing. They had learned how to invest at the level of their expected return. So if they thought they could win, they were going to practice hard. If they didn't think, and I'm using a generalization, that captured a mindset of a majority of our team. Not everybody, but a majority. So that Georgia week, I remember being in this room, and I was screaming. This is Monday of the Georgia week, because I could see it. I had heard about it. I knew that they were already starting to resist the process, and it showed up on Saturday, 35-0 after the first quarter. I'm trying to do the math in my mind, like what is 35 times 4? Because I'm going to be responsible for the worst loss in college football history. And I've said this before, but I think in those moments you have to like make decisions around what, like your decisions are distilled to the simplest form. Is do I coach the team? Do I blame the team? And that really becomes your values as a person. I'm going to coach the team. This is why I'm here. So let me be one person that's not judging them for where they are. Let me get on my knee and get them to lift their gaze and set their jaws and go fight for more. And the game ends up 62-0, and it could have been a lot worse, So you ask about, moments where I thought this was going to work. That first year, we won 2 games. Both were come from behind wins with last second field goals. One against Colorado State on the road, one against UConn at home. I do think we improved as the year went on, but as we closed that year out, it felt a million miles away. Coming in the second year, there was I had a different focus, and I think I was able to capture the learning from year one and apply it to year 2. We go on the road, we beat Hawaii, and played really well. And then that season, we went on the road and beat Kentucky, who at the time was ranked, and we beat Florida at home. And we got to 5 wins and weren't able to cross that next, hump, but it felt like, okay, we're making progress. And that was a great feeling. In that second season, we lost to Georgia on the road, Alabama on the road, and Tennessee at home, something to the tune of like 150-something to 3 was a total final score. So even as we made progress, you could still sense this huge gap. And in those first 2 years, we also lost our best players in the portal or to the NFL with undrafted grades. So it was clear that, as we were growing talent from within, we didn't have these systems in place to retain talent. Tyler Steen goes to Alabama, becomes a 3rd-round pick, I think, and Ray Davis goes to Kentucky. He was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2022, and we lost him. Anthony Orji goes to the Saints. These were opportunities for us to bring people back that could have helped us continue to elevate. As it was, going into year 3, we really brought back a young team that had lost some important leadership voices, and we struggled to get off the ground. And I don't know that it was necessarily just a bad coaching job. It wasn't that we were, I think in a lot of ways we'd improved as a team. You saw the games start to tighten in terms of the margins, but we were still another heave away from where we needed to be. That third year did feel the furthest away to me, though, because it wasn't supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt like I finally had this reset of like, let go of expectations, focus on the work, and just, I want to be proud of what I'm a part of. What does that look like every day? How do I become more effective in this role? We lost players that year. I think that's a good thing. That they chose to leave the mission meant that they weren't supposed to be on the mission. And we were able to replace those attitudes with people that came in and saw the goodness in what we were doing. By the way, with the help of Candace and Chancellor Diermeyer, we also had a NIL program started that was going to become the foundation of player retention, player acquisition. That got us in the game, and from there, I think the fourth year was about the combination of having a team that had an attitude. We see ourselves as a group of misfits here, that no one else wants, but we want each other, and we're gonna scrap together and fight, and we're good enough to win every game. Yeah. And you took that mentality, and you had players that came in, players that developed internally, and it kind of came together in a way that showed the progress we've made. So results can be disorienting. And I from year 2 to year 3, I thought double down on everything, and we're heading in the right direction. Year 3 slapped me in the face, and it's like, okay, well, let's not make any assumptions, and let's focus on the fundamental things that we want to be really good at, and let's see that 23 season from the perspective of 10 years from now, all the success we've unlocked. What are we doing right now in our choices to redirect so that it becomes a positive part of this story and this program's trajectory? Yeah. We were able to capture that, and now we got to pull it forward.
What was your favorite moment of year 4?
Favorite, it would probably, there's 3 that stand out to me as favorites. The number 1 would probably be the win to get to bowl eligibility, because I just think that only happens for you once as a head coach, the first time. And for this program to do that on the road against a good team, I was so proud of the way our team played that day. And in some ways, the opponent was Auburn, and a lot of the transformation in the program came from us playing Auburn here in 23 and getting beat soundly, and then watching New Mexico State play them 2 weeks later, and beating them handily, and it just said, the wheels started to spin around, what am I telling myself, and what is truth, and how do I get closer to truth and how I'm perceiving the program. So the Auburn win to get to bowl eligibility, the Virginia Tech win to start the season was such an important game for us, and it was one that was not straightforward. We had a great start that we squandered, and we had to claw back in the game. But to me, that was like a celebration in our community, and a great reward to a group of players that had worked really hard, some of whom had stayed and persevered through things that most humans wouldn't do, And then the bowl win would be 3 for me, because again, that's a historical win for this program. And I had a team that in bowl prep, we focused on the fact that we hadn't had a winning season since 2013. We hadn't won a bowl game since 2013. We hadn't beat 5 Power 5 opponents since 2013. All of these firsts. And it was a team of like identities. And so it was like, who's going to be the more physical team? Who's going to establish the run game? Who's going to make the plays? And the way this group prepared for that game, I've got such a respect for a program going through a bowl game first time. I mean, there was one day where I felt the focus was off just a little bit, and that was Christmas Day. And I think in the scheme of things, you can allow for that.
Expect it.
But that was, there's a big difference between 6-7 and 7-6. It just is. And with the program we want to be, having a winning season was really important to us. And so there's others, obviously, but those three kind of almost, you know, bracket the season the right way too. Start, middle, and end. You know, those were special.